Let me tell you how I protected America's technological edge. For years, China stole our designs, forced our companies to hand over secrets, and built their military with Silicon Valley chips. So I did what any responsible superpower would do. I cut them off.
Interesting narrative, Eagle. Here's another version. You spent 15 years escalating. Obama's pivot to Asia, Trump's trade war, Biden's semiconductor bans. Then you act surprised when I respond to what looks like systematic containment.
You forced technology transfers, stole intellectual property. Every restriction I imposed was a response.
And every action of mine was a response to yours. You banned my access to advanced semiconductors, tech I need for hospitals, universities, electric vehicles. Then wondered why I invested $150 billion to build my own chip industry.
Two superpowers, one irreplaceable technology, a relationship weaponized by 15 years of escalating restrictions. But here's what nobody tells you. This wasn't just about semiconductors, and American businesses saw it coming. Before we get to the drama, let's talk about what American businesses actually wanted. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. They've been saying the same thing for 20 years. Pull up any U.S. trade representative comment from 2005, 2012, 2018, or 2025. The complaints are identical: forced tech transfers, IP theft, opaque regulations, discriminatory procurement, word for 2 decades.
And while everyone focused on semiconductors, China was my biggest customer. $12.4 billion in soybeans. $1.6 billion in pork. That was economics. Simple trade, mutual benefit. Then came the trade war. Policymakers promised it would be easy to win. Beijing slapped 25% tariffs on American soybeans. Overnight, Brazil and Argentina swooped in. My exports to China dropped 53% between 2017 and 2019.
So what changed? Not what businesses wanted. What changed was both governments discovered magic words: national economic security. Say those words, and you can justify anything. Beijing deployed security laws like tripwires, the counter-espionage law, the data security law. Foreign companies faced raids, detentions, asset freezes. But Washington mirrored the playbook. The BIS entity list exploded from approximately 700 entities in early 2017 to over 1,300 by 2024, 715 of them Chinese. Export controls didn't just target military chips, they covered entire sectors.
You created a small yard, high fence that became sprawling industrial policy.
And you turned every business operation into a potential crime.
Both true. Both governments weaponized national security. And companies stopped asking what makes business sense. They started asking, what satisfies political security theater? Now here's what should alarm you. The people tasked with managing this relationship, diplomats and policymakers, became the loudest amplifiers of escalation. Over 15 years, they arrived into bureaucracies already primed for confrontation. Rather than stabilizing, many became architects of further escalation. Here's the pattern. Beijing responds to perceived containment. Washington's policy establishment cites that as proof of Chinese aggression. More restrictions follow. Beijing retaliates. The cycle repeats. And here's the kicker. Crisis management pays better than crisis resolution. Former officials command 6-figure consulting fees. They monetize expertise to help corporations navigate the very restrictions they helped create. Book deals, speaking circuits, board positions.
The USDA paid farmers $28 billion in bailouts to compensate for a trade war we never asked for. The same policymakers who promised it would help us, they got consulting contracts and speaking fees when it failed.
Meanwhile, China restructured its entire food supply chain. Investments in Brazilian farmland, African agriculture, Russian grain corridors. By 2024, U.S. soybean market share in China dropped from 34% to 21%.
You taught me never to depend on a supplier whose policymakers treat commerce as warfare. So I built redundancy just like you're doing with semiconductors.
We both weaponized interdependence. We both turned economics into war.
The question isn't whether China poses challenges, it does. The question is whether the establishment that spent 15 years building this crisis is the right group to navigate us out, especially when they've monetized it and face zero accountability. Part 2 will show you what a real off-ramp looks like. Not the spin room version, the implementable one. One that remembers this was always supposed to be about economics, not war,